Hello.
Hello. So we thought it was a good time. We've got about 1 week left, and we thought it'd be a good time just to almost run through some of our best things that we thought we wish we knew before we left. So this is 17 things that we would have wanted to know before we got here. So our first one we'd say would be to get your e-visas sorted. When we were in the queue coming through the airport, there was a big queue of people where they go and get all their visas. But for us, because we had sorted e-visas, we just scanned our passports like you do in the EU and just went straight through on the electric things, and our e-visa was all automatically on there, although we did have the paperwork as well. These costed, I think it was about £50, we'll put the exact price on the screen, and we had to sort them around 3 weeks before our trip, 2 to 3 weeks. So if you are planning on doing an e-visa, do it ahead of time.
We also had our tourist levy and our declaration forms, so they're also good to have at the same time. The next thing is, if you're headed to Uluwatu, it's a good thing to book in advance. A lot of the hostels and the nicer hotels for the more reasonable prices tend to get booked up quickly.
Yeah, Uluwatu is our favourite place in Bali, just because it's chill, surfer vibes. Some people say you don't need that much time there, but we quite like just chilling out by the beach and watching the surfing. So for us, it's a really good location. Some other people might want to party more, so Canggu is more suited. But
it's also a lot more expensive than the other villages and than the other places in Bali, like Canggu or Ubud. So just something to bear in mind before you head there.
yeah, generally you're looking at £15 to £20 a night each. So in like a booking.com room or even in hostels.
You can go a lot cheaper if you want like a homestay and you're not that fussed, but we prefer to have something a little bit nicer.
So the next point would be bartering. For us coming to Bali, we knew it was a thing. Don't be worried, don't be afraid to go even like half of what they initially ask for, because you'll work out in the middle. It takes a bit of time to get used to it, but you will barter with everyone. Don't take anyone's first price in the markets. In shops, it's slightly different.
Yeah, they really like bartering, so it's not insulting to just sort of throw out a price. The next thing is SIMs. We opted for the physical SIM. Just it suited us a little bit better, a little bit less expensive than an eSIM, and you can tend to get a little bit more data packages, like more data, and obviously doing videos and Instagram and things, we wanted a bit more data. We opted to do it in the airport just because it was convenient, and it means that when you get out there, when you arrive in the airport, the taxis, everyone, it's all a bit overwhelming, and after a long flight you just want something sorted so you can book a Grab or a Gojek.
Yeah, but you can literally just buy the SIMs as you walk out of Denpasar. We paid 350k for ours, which is a lot for a SIM. But it lasted us for the whole first month, and then we bought another one in Lombok for 100k, which will put the prices up in pounds and euros and dollars up on the screen. But it was, if you buy them out of the airport, it's a lot cheaper, but it's just for convenience. It's not that much in the whole scheme of things to buy one.
Yeah, it's only like a £5 difference, and just for the convenience and the stress, it's so much more worth it getting it straight away.
So the next thing would be Grab and Gojek prices. They can vary depending on where you are and also what you're using. So Grab and Gojek are the two motorbike kind of shuttle companies that you use, and they also do taxis. They also do food as well, like Deliveroo in the UK. But they do vary whether you're in Canggu or whether you're in Ubud or Uluwatu, so just be wary of that. Also on that point, if you do go to Nusa Penida or Nusa Lembongan, Grab doesn't work in Sanur. The taxi drivers, there's like a way where Grab, you have to walk all the way out to get your Grab, and they'll accept your Grab and then not actually come and get you, and then they'll come round as the taxi driver and say, right, this is how much it's going to be, and it will be double what the Grab was going to be. So just be conscious
they
of
work
that.
together, so just bear that in mind when you're arriving into these ports. The other thing is, if you do have an eSIM, I've heard that it's hard to get Gojek. So it's something to think about when you're debating whether to get a physical SIM or an eSIM. You will only be able to use Grab, but that's also not the end of the world, because everywhere that has Gojek also has Grab.
Yeah. Something that was a little bit of a shock to us initially, but because we weren't aware of it, is in the UK you always pay service in most places, and I know that you do in America and across the world, but the tax isn't generally included in the prices on food menus, so it'll always be 10% minimum on top of all the food that you've bought, and then they'll add on 5 to 10% for a service charge. So it can be up to 21% extra of what you've actually initially paid, which doesn't seem like that much, but when it's every single meal, you're buying 3 meals a day for a whole week, and then it ends up being 21 different types of meals, then that 20% really does add up. So be wary of that when you're budgeting.
They don't tend to have the service and tax in Warung, so if you are on a much tighter budget, that's a better option for you.
Yeah.
But again, some Warungs will still have it, so it's just something to bear in mind when you go. The next thing is, if you're solo traveling, one thing to note is that you might not make friends everywhere, and don't feel disheartened by that. It's a little bit different in like Thailand and Vietnam, where there's a sort of general popular route that everyone seems to follow. But in Bali, there's so many different itineraries you can do and so many different orders that you might be saying a hi and goodbye. So you might meet someone and then be like, oh, well, we're parting ways. And it's a bit of a shame, but yeah, it's something to note, and don't feel, sad about it.
But equally, you can meet friends and you can meet people, and
you might bump into them in another market
or
later in the trip.
Or go around together. You can meet people and go around together. It just varies. Yeah, so the next one would be, don't be shocked by kind of how kind the Indonesians are. Like, from chatting to people, we found that everyone said that they are honestly some of the nicest people that they've ever met, and generally it's true. When you're at a waterfall, sometimes you're a bit lost. Don't think that they're not always trying to rip you off or get money off you if they just hop on their bike and drive 5 minutes down the road to show you where it is. They're generally just being super, super kind, and like, they want you to go and see and explore. So
yeah, they love having the tourists around, and they're just generally very helpful people, and some of the kindest people we've ever met. Like, you'll be driving along on a motorbike and all these little kids will be waving at you, and they're just really kind people. So don't think they're always trying to get money out of you.
yeah. So the next one, which is number 10, the touristy places tend to get busy from after 9 or before 3 in the afternoon, 3 or 4. So your best bet, if you want to, in peak season between kind of June and August, if you want to be in those cool places that you see on Instagram or social media or Google, you need to be there before 9 o'clock, 9:30, or after 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Just to avoid the crowds.
Just you'll avoid the crowds. It can take away from the experience sometimes, so we really recommend that. The other day we went to one of the most famous waterfalls in Bali that you see all over Instagram, and we got there at 7 in the morning because that's when it opened, but there was actually a wedding there. And that will be in our video in a few weeks' time. But we ended up going back at 9 when they were open, and even we got there there was already 3-4 couples down there, and when we were leaving there must have been 40 or 50 people there, and that was 9:30 in the morning. So yeah, be conscious of that.
The next thing is that you're travelling a long distance, say for example from Lavina to Uluwatu, best to get an actual driver instead of a Grab or a Gojek. This is generally just something the locals told us, is that sometimes for the longer journeys, a Grab might accept your journey but not actually turn up. It's a long distance and there tends to be a lot of traffic in a lot of places, so they prefer not to do some of those. That's not necessarily a definite thing, but if you want a driver there at a specific time, it's better to book in advance through a hotel or hostel or just an online service.
When we were researching before we came out to Indonesia, everywhere said rainy season kind of started end of September. In Bali, it's kind of true. We've had a little bit of rain. It's beginning of October now. But chatting to most people, the main rainy season in Bali will start from November. But actually, in the other islands, you're sweet until December. So everywhere east of here, you don't get any rainy season until December, is what all the locals have said to us. You might get a bit of rain, but if it does rain, you get an hour of rain, basically. And don't trust the forecast out here either. We had times in Lombok where it would say it's thunderstorm for 5 days, and we genuinely didn't see a single drop of rain.
Yeah, we planned our whole trip around the weather, and then it turned out to be completely sunny the entire time.
We adjusted our plans because we had bad weather forecast, but yeah, ended up being different. But yeah, that's one thing that you should definitely note.
The next thing to note is if you're travelling to Indonesia, it tends to be a lot more expensive than the other countries in Southeast Asia. For example, Thailand and Vietnam are going to be a lot cheaper than here, so that's something you might want to adjust your budget for. It's not going to be the exact same. You can expect to pay about £5 per meal generally as a budgeting terminology.
It really depends on where you're going to eat. If you're happy and want to eat in Warungs and probably eat mie goreng, you can just pay £2.50 a meal. Like, that's quite easy if you want to go to all the different places, and then you pay kind of £2 or £1.50 for a drink or a beer or whatnot. But I think a good budget, is about £5 including your drink for a meal. So a day, £15 to £20 a day would be a good budget for food.
Generally also in Bali, you can't just order the street food on the side of the road. We've had friends travelling in Thailand and Vietnam, and they've said the street food's amazing, they're eating there all the time. In Bali, they're just...
And Indonesia.
Yeah, and Indonesia. It's just like the food sitting out all day, and you don't want to risk it really.
The warungs are Indonesia's equivalent of kind of street food, I'd say, because you can get the really nice classic Indonesian food out here. But yeah, the actual little stalls on the back of motorbikes on the side of the road, anyone we've chatted to who has been Western and eating that have got sick. So one thing that we had a proper experience with Fern getting sick, which will actually be in our video next week. But basically, insurance, it's really, really important that you check all your details of the insurance. We did, and we were covered. But there's small things in our insurance, like Fern got typhoid. If she hadn't had the recommended NHS vaccine, which was recommending to get the typhoid vaccine, our insurance wouldn't have covered her. So she would have been completely out of pocket. And also, when we were claiming for her insurance, you need to have your proof of your vaccine that you've had it. You will have it on the NHS app, but it can be difficult to access that when you're out in Southeast Asia with dodgy Wi-Fi or incorrect timings to call people. You've got different SIMs. So just bear that in mind. I would have proof of all the vaccines that you've got on you and like in the documents before you come out. So you've just got that fast claims process for you. And another thing to note with the doctors is they will take your passports. So your insurance company will need to claim fairly quickly, otherwise you'll have to pay out of pocket if you want to move on to another location. So if you have all the documents you need for your insurance claim almost set up beforehand, before you come out travelling, then that process is 10 times faster. The next thing would be bikes. So you will probably rent bikes out here. The bikes tend to cost no more than 100k. If someone tries to charge you more than 100,000 for a day, you're being ripped off. That's about £5. Generally, you can barter down to about 75,000 a day, depending on where you are. Further east, you'll be able to get cheaper. In Bali, they can be more expensive.
Especially if you are planning on renting the bike for multiple days, they're more likely to drop the price if it's sort of like 4 days as opposed to just 1 day. So have a look around first.
And the final thing on bikes would be fuel stations are essentially on the side of the road. It's some absolute vodka bottles, litre vodka bottles, and they tend to cost, I think it's 25,000 for 2 litres, which is just over £1.
It'll vary in most places, but this is sort of the general
This has been the general price across all of Indonesia. It's been about 25,000. It will be cheaper at the actual fuel stations, but they're so far in between. It's easier just to go to one of these stores on the side of the road.
The next thing is learn the currency before you arrive in Bali. It's super easy to just spend a load of money in your first week and rip through your budget, not realising how much you're spending. A general rule of thumb is about 100k is about £5, so most of your meals are about £5 as well.
Yeah, about £5. So it'd be about 100,000 per meal, including the tax, that is. But yeah, you want to try not to spend more than 100,000 each per month. So drivers in Indonesia and Bali will always be after work. If you get a driver, you can book them through hotels or hostels or anything like that. And when you find one that you like, you can chat to them and ask them if they are available over the next couple of days. If you want to go see a couple of different places, you can also do this with Grab drivers and Gojek drivers. They can take you on waterfall tours or temple tours and stuff like that. And actually, if you split that between 3 or 4 of you, that can end up being a lot cheaper than it is just booking through Get Your Guide or something like that. Equally, you can find drivers through Get Your Guide if you book like a waterfall tour through it, and then you might be able to chat to that driver and they'll be able to take you to the place.
So some apps to download before you're coming out is Grab, Gojek, Bluebird. Bluebird's not really used in Bali, but if you're heading to Lombok, that's the best taxi service to use. You've also got Hostelworld, Booking.com and Airbnb. To be honest, we didn't really use Airbnb.
No, Airbnb's, you don't, unless you're going for like a longer term stay and have a slightly larger budget, Airbnb can be quite difficult. Booking.com tends to be the best one, especially if you're in a two, because then you can book a room and you then split the price in two. Hostelworld, if you're solo traveling, is going to be your main go-to.
With Booking.com, it's good to keep using them because as you go through your journey, you'll have the genius discounts. So 10%, 20%, 50%, the further down your journey. Like this week, we've managed to get some really nice accommodations for about 50% off just because we've been using Booking.com so religiously.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed our 17 things we've learned and they come in handy for you if you're coming out traveling. And I'm sure there's lots of different videos.
If you've already travelled to Bali or Indonesia and you think of anything else that might be of help to someone watching this video, then comment down below what you've also found helpful. Next week we head to Lombok, where we find some of the most beautiful beaches we've ever seen. We explore local villages and enjoy remote waterfalls all to ourselves. Oh yeah, and I end up with typhoid. We really haven't been that lucky this trip with sickness.
And if you're enjoying what we're doing here on EGC, don't forget to like and subscribe.
See you next week.